So you are at Fostering Self-Advocacy Before, During, and After Transition to Adulthood. I think we'd all know that effective self-advocacy requires a solid understanding of one's strengths and needs, along with the ability to communicate that essential information clearly. So this evening, we're very happy to have nationally recognized presenter, educator, and changemaker, Sam Drazin, Executive Director of Changing Perspectives. He knows about self-advocacy firsthand, and he applies his personal and professional background to lead Changing Perspectives' mission, which is to strengthen communities through social emotional learning, disability awareness, empathy development, and inclusion. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Sam. And thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you so much, Alyssa, for the introduction. Good evening, everybody. So excited to be here. I think this is my second or third Parents Helping Parents workshop that I've had the pleasure to lead. I'm going to share my screen now. We'll jump right into tonight's workshop. All right, so tonight's workshop, we're really going to talk about strategies that you can use as parents, guardians, and caregivers to support your young people who live with disabilities in becoming their best self-advocates. As Alyssa said, my name is Sam Drazin. A little bit about me. I am a person with a disability. I was born with a rare craniofacial anomaly called Treacher-Collins syndrome. I've had 8 facial reconstructive surgeries, and I wear 2 bone conductive hearing aids. So I like to say that I've been on both sides of the desk. I've been on the side of the desk as a student with a difference who's learned how to advocate for my needs. And I've also been on the side of the desk as an elementary school teacher, having to advocate for the needs of my students. So growing up, I always felt a little different. I always felt a little invisible sometimes. I felt as though my teachers never fully understood my needs when it came to academics, social, and emotional. As a result, I decided that I was going to become a teacher. So I started my career as actually a para-educator, supporting students who receive special education services. From that, I became a 5th grade teacher. After that, I became a 3rd grade teacher. For the last 10 years, I've had the privilege of starting Changing Perspectives, an educational nonprofit organization for which I now serve as the executive director. I've put my email address up here on this slide. I really welcome and encourage you to reach out to me after tonight's presentation. Happy to be an ongoing support for you and your families, and also talk further about any of the things that come up in tonight's presentation. A little bit more about Changing Perspectives. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We partner primarily with schools and school districts to support them in creating more inclusive learning communities, specifically for students who receive special education services. We do our work in 5 ways: through curriculum, providing family workshops like this one, professional development trainings for educators, para-educators, and administrators. We visit schools through what we call site visits to provide in-person support. And we also provide virtual coaching. Our website is up here on the screen. I invite you to check us out, share it with the schools in your community if you think they might be interested, as well as liking and following us on social media. Now that you know a little bit more about me and the work that I bring to this, as well as my personal experience, we are just going to jump right in tonight on this Tuesday evening with our presentation. I want to start with a brief TED Talk. I'm a big fan of TED Talks, especially when our young people are the ones giving the presentation. So this is a TED Talk called We Are All Different, and that's awesome, by a young man named Cole Blakeway. And in this TED Talk, Cole shares a little bit about a special friendship that he has with an individual who lives with autism. And as I shared this TED Talk, I really encourage you to think about why I chose this to kick off tonight's presentation on supporting our young people in better understanding themselves, communicating their needs, and becoming their best self-advocates. Enjoy.
My name is Cole, and over the next few minutes, I'm going to teach you that it's okay to be different. Since a young age, I've worn different colored socks and 2 different shoes. Why? Because I am unique, a standout from the crowd. I feel best when I am being me. This summer, a funny thing happened. I was in a bookstore with my mom when I realized everyone was strangely quiet. And so I did what needed to be done. I started singing. As a joke, my mom pointed to a book and said, "Hey Cole, this book is for you." I pulled it out and read the cover. Here's what it said: "You're weird." A creative journal for misfits, oddballs, and anyone else who's uniquely awesome. It's the best book ever. It tells everyone it's cool to be different. Today, I'm going to tell you about a friendship of mine that is a little different than you might expect. This is one of my best friends, Stephen. He is the happiest person I know. Stephen is 44 years old and has autism. Let me start by explaining how we became special friends. When my mom was just 13 years old, she was in the high school cafeteria about to have lunch with her friends. Then she passed a table of kids with special needs. Stephen was a boy at that table. He shouted out, "Hey, what's your name? Come sit with me." My mom sat down, and in that moment, a special friendship began. Stephen asked my mom 3 questions. He wanted to know what she was having for lunch, her phone number, and if they could be friends for 40 years. As my mom gave him her phone number and said yes, he clapped with excitement and said, "I will call you every day." Ever since that day, in 1988, he has kept his promise and called our house every single day. When I was born, Stephen was a special part of our family, and I've grown up calling him Uncle Stephen. Stephen is included in family dinners, he comes to my soccer games, he loves watching movies with us, and every couple of weeks he has a sleepover. Stephen has had autism his whole life. Autism spectrum disorder refers to a range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech and nonverbal communications, as well as by unique strengths and differences. My friend Stephen is not able to drive a car, but he is able to memorize every phone number he has ever heard. There is no cure for autism, but I think Stephen is perfect the way he is. One of my favorite memories with Stephen is whenever a fire truck passes us. He shouts out, "When I grow up, I want to be a fire truck." That always makes me smile. He likes the idea of being a fireman, but he loves the idea of being a fire truck. Another thing that always makes me laugh is how much he likes to eat. Have you ever met someone who can eat a steak, 8 slices of pizza, French fries, apple pie, ice cream, and they are still starving? Well, Stephen eats all that almost every time we see him. Finally, one of my favorite memories with Stephen is when we play hide and seek. He always hides in the closets. I love playing hide and seek with Stephen. It always makes me smile. But not just me. He makes everyone smile. I don't think we need a cure for autism, just like we don't need a cure for freckles. Autism is not a disease, just like brown hair isn't a disease. You don't need to fix something that isn't broken. I look up to my Uncle Stephen as he is the happiest person I know. Stephen doesn't try to be like anyone else. He is exactly who he was meant to be. Imagine a world where we all live like Stephen. Find out what makes you different. Don't be afraid to stand out. Wake up, jump out of bed, and be exactly who you are. We are all a little different, and that's awesome. Thank you.
So with that, and those words from Cole, that we are all different and that's awesome, let's jump into how we can support our young people in becoming their best self-advocates. For those of you who've joined us recently, we will have time at the end for Q&A. If you have any questions, comments, please put them in the chat or the Q&A box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen on the toolbar. I always start with this model. Awareness is the foundation for empathy. If we want other people to have empathy towards those who live with varying differences, we need to ensure that they have awareness of other people and how they experience the world. And so I like this visual because when you think about how you build a house or a structure, you start with your foundation first, and then everything on top is supported by the foundation. If we want people to have empathy towards those who are different from themselves in whatever way, it is really vital that we provide opportunities and educational experiences to be able to lay a strong foundation of awareness of differences in order to build a roof that houses strong empathetic perspectives. I also want to acknowledge that you know your kids best. For most of you on tonight's call, I have not had the pleasure of meeting you personally. I have not met your kids. So as I go through the strategies tonight, I just want you to take everything with a little bit of a grain of salt. Some strategies you might go, what's this guy talking about? This isn't going to work for me. Some strategies are going to work for you and your kids. So you know your kids best. What I'm hoping to do tonight is really serve you up a buffet of strategies that you can then select from based on what's going to work best for you and your child's needs. The end of the day, what we're trying to do is change behavior. Number 3 in the orange circle. We're trying to change our students' behaviors, our kids' or our young people's behaviors, so that they are able to better communicate their needs. They're able to be their own best self-advocates. Now, in order to do that, we need to make sure that they have a certain perception of themselves that is rooted in self-confidence. And in order to be self-confident in yourself, to have that perception of who you are, you need to acknowledge, you need to know who you are. So becoming a self-advocate isn't something that happens overnight, right? The action doesn't just happen overnight. We need to ensure that our young people feel confident in who they are. And in order to be confident in who you are, you need to know and build your own self-awareness. When we think about building our young people's self-awareness, I think it's really important that we balance our young people in understanding their strengths, the things that they're good at, their unique qualities, as well as their needs or their challenges or their obstacles. What I find a lot of times with adults with good intent, sometimes we aren't balanced with this, right? Sometimes we just build our kids up and all we do is we tell them all the really, 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 really great things that they're good at. And we diminish their needs and the opportunity to openly discuss and help them understand what their needs are. On the flip side, I've also witnessed adults who just focus on all of the things their kids need. You know, you tell your teacher you need this. You tell people you need this. This is in your 504. This is in your IEP. These are the things that you need help with. And we forget about building up their strengths. And so I really encourage you to think about as we support and strengthen our young people's awareness of themselves, that we are mindful that it is a balance. We need to balance helping them understand, feel loud and proud, and build up their strengths, but also remind them and ensure that they do understand the needs that they have to be successful, independent people. Labels are a tricky thing. And everyone on tonight's call may have different perspectives and comfort levels when it comes to helping our young people be able to identify and label themselves as a person who lives with a disability. The way that I like to think about it is labels can do two things. Labels can be incredibly empowering and also help our young people identify as part of a larger community of people who live with a similar disability. Labels can also be disempowering and can be rooted in ableism and ableistic thinking. So I think labeling and helping our young people be able to articulate that I am a person who lives with a hearing loss, or I am a person who lives with this life experience, can be incredibly valuable. But what's important is how we present the label to our young people and how we do it in a way that is rooted in empowerment, rooted in our strengths, rooted in being able to identify and foster group identity. So being really mindful of that is important, and how we support our students' teachers and IEP teams and 504 teams in those conversations around identifying a student with a specific disability and labeling that. The more consistent that all the adults are in the room and the team, the more empowered our young people are going to feel. Another visual you can use to help you think about this, again, this is the buffet, right? We're starting the buffet. I'm throwing different ideas, different visuals, different concepts at you so you can process it and think about what works best for you in your situation. I like to think about all of us as made up of puzzle pieces. I call it the identity puzzle. So every one of us, we can think about different puzzle pieces. And for some of the pieces of our puzzle, they're bigger. If our young people feel really loud and proud about that component of their identity, some of our puzzle pieces are smaller. If maybe we feel a little shyer about that component of our identity. And our identity puzzle is not stagnant. It's constantly changing, right? Because our likes, our dislikes, our personality is constantly changing. But I think what's really important is that for our young people with disabilities, in order to build that self-awareness, we can't be devoid of disability being a piece of the puzzle. So disability is a piece of the puzzle. For some of our students, it might be a big piece, depending on how they feel about their disability as a component of their identity. Some of our students, it's a smaller piece, but it is a piece of the puzzle, along with all the other pieces that make up their unique identities. So again, just as you think about how do I engage in my in conversations, discussions, or experiences with my young people about building self-awareness, it's about balancing strengths and needs. It's about being really intentional in our language to use labels as an empowering way and a way to help them create group identity. And then also recognizing this idea of the identity puzzle and ensuring that disability is a part of the identity puzzle, but being mindful that our puzzle changes as we age, as we go through puberty, as we have new experiences in our life. When we think about some other specific activities you can do to support your young people in developing greater self-awareness. One is who am I activities, right? So this is the idea of the identity puzzle or the labels. So doing visuals is great. Posters, gluing out things, coloring things, any visuals can be really, really powerful. The paper bag activity would be an activity where you could give your child a paper bag, a basket, a backpack, some container of sorts, have them go around their house, your house, and put items in it, that container, that represent who they are, essentially components of their identity puzzle. And then it's really fun if you like set a timer, you can make it kind of a game of sorts where they have a certain amount of time, they put objects in, and then they unpack them. Now, for some of our other, another variation on that is Zoom in or FaceTime with a relative, a friend, and have your young person unpack their paper bag and share what they chose with someone else, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a family friend. Digital projects can be really valuable. Having your kid make a movie about who they are, a slideshow about who they are, a podcast. There's lots of different digital platforms they can use. What I like about the digital projects is that you could then share it through text messages or your own social media platform, if that's appropriate for you. And you can get your family and friends to comment on it. And that's a way that we can start to move from self-awareness to self-confidence, because our young people are seeing that the people in their life who love them and care about them are commenting and sending emojis and positive reinforcement about who they are. Another piece that plays into self-awareness is about identifying our emotions. And this does play into self-advocacy later down the line, because we want our students to be able to recognize how they're feeling so they're able to articulate their needs before emotions maybe get more escalated. And so really looking at different ways to help our students be able to identify their own emotions in a given situations. Again, I'm going to go to visuals, paper plates, emojis. You could get a whole bunch of paper plates, pick some emotions that are most common for your young person, have them draw an emoji on each paper plate that represents that emotion. If that doesn't work for them, you could print out emojis, have them cut it out, glue it on. You could also have them make their own facial expressions, take a picture of them, print it out, cut it out, glue it on. But what I like about the paper plates is it's something like very tangible and physical, that when they're feeling a certain emotion, if they're having a hard time using their voice to articulate it, you can instruct them, go get your paper plate emojis and show me how you're feeling. They can go and get it and hold it up. What I also like about it is that they have ownership of it because they've done something to help create this tool, this paper plate emoji. Now, paper plate emojis, though, is going to provide a lot of different emotion options. For some of our students, that might be not the best way for them to consider their emotions. So you may want to use something called zones of regulation. If you Google it, you can find it, but essentially it's the idea of a thermometer, and you've got green if you're feeling regulated and in control, yellow or orange like a traffic light. If you're kind of feeling, I'm feeling a little anxious, I feel some things bubbling up, and then red if we're feeling really escalated. So this is a way where our young people can kind of measure where they are at in their own emotional regulation if identifying specific emotions is not going to work for them. I'm a huge, 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 huge fan of involving our young adults in their IEP meetings. Sometimes folks ask me how old is at what age should they start doing that? I think 3rd grade is a perfect time where they should start being a part of those IEP meetings. Doesn't mean they need to be a part of the entire meeting. They should be there for part of it. How can they build self-awareness if other people are talking about them and they don't have a voice, right? It's like the saying that we hear a lot in the disability community, which is nothing nothing about us without us, right? And if we're talking about someone and their lived experience, they need to be a part of that conversation in some capacity. Another way to support the development of self-awareness is connecting and contrasting visuals. So for some of our young people who need very structured options, being able to print out some pictures or do things on a technology device of sorts, do you like baseball or do you like football? Do you want a hamburger or do you want a pizza? And being able to give them the option to choose, I like this, I don't like this. So I shared a lot already with self-awareness. I see lots of pings in the chat and in the Q&A. We'll definitely get to all your thoughts at the end of the presentation. But thinking about balancing strengths and needs, this idea of labeling the disability through an empowering way, being mindful of our identity project or identity puzzle, and then some of these activities to help students be able to better articulate, explore, and consider their own self-awareness. As I mentioned earlier, self-awareness is the first step of this three-step process to ultimately get to the action self-advocacy. Another piece about self-awareness, though, is helping students make connections to this idea of group identity, right? We are human beings, we're social beings. We all want to be a part of a group. And so for some of our young people, it can feel very isolating living with a disability. They may feel like they are, or maybe they are the only kid at their school who lives with a certain disability. So another way to boost that self-awareness is to help them make connections with other people who live with the same disability. Depending on where you live, that may be easier or harder. One of the really exciting things that has happened in the last probably 5 or 6 years is the increase in disability representation in media. And by media, I mean books, literature. With the book Wonder that came out, that really kind of spiked things. Fish in a Tree, Out of My Mind. There's a plethora now of books out there that include and feature characters with disabilities. Also videos, movies, Netflix, Hulu, a lot of these streaming platforms are now really being more intentional of creating feature presentations that focus on individuals with disabilities. And not just that, but the actors and actresses playing those characters live with that disability, which is really revolutionary and hasn't happened before. So it's really exciting to see such an increase. So I really encourage you to look for videos, look for books that you can watch, read, listen to with your young people, and ask those guiding questions, making those connections. How do you feel like you're like some of the characters? How do you feel like you're different from some of the characters? Have you ever felt that way? That really helps our young people create a sense of what we call group identity, where they recognize they're not the only one who lives with a specific disability and lived experience. If you need recommendations for books, TV shows, videos, I've got a whole bunch that I'm happy to share. So now we're going to move to the next part of this work, which is self-confidence. So after we've done some intentional work supporting our young people in gaining self-confidence, self-awareness, whether that's through watching videos, reading books, whether that's through engaging in some of those activities that I mentioned, we're now ready to help our young people think about, okay, I know who I am at this moment in time. It's always changing, right? This work isn't a checkbox. I know who I am at this moment in time. And now we're going to help our young people go into this area that we call self-confidence. I think it's really important for young people to be able to share about themselves. I know for me, it was 5th grade, and I was about to have another large surgery. And so I had an opportunity to share with my 5th grade class about my Treacher-Collins syndrome and the things that are challenging for me and the things about me that they might not know. And it was at that point where I felt much more confident in who I am. And it makes sense, right? You know, the way our special education system works is, if a student is getting pulled out for a service, the interventionist, whoever it is, the OT, the SLP, the special educator, the paraeducator, they kind of come into the gen ed classroom, they kind of tap the kid on the shoulder and they're like, shh, and then they whisk them out of the classroom, right? Makes it feel like we need to be silent about this. How can we gain self-confidence about what makes us unique if no one will ever talk about it? Or if the only time we talk about it, it's in this mass sort of way. So I really encourage you, especially as our young people are transitioning out of school, to give them opportunities to talk about or share in the communication style that works best for them, who they are. Choice is power. Let them choose the audience, the venue, right? They may articulate that they just want to share a little bit about themselves to a few teachers, to maybe neighbors, to maybe some good family friends, to a small group of friends in school. Give them that choice and that autonomy. Provide students with scripts or templates if needed. For some of our young people, they need very scripted options. So I've helped some young people develop these presentations, where we might do a slideshow, and it's slide 1, who's in your family? Slide 2, what's your favorite food? Slide 3, what do you want to be when you grow up? Slide 4, what are your strengths? Slide 5, what are your needs, right? We slowly scaffold from low risk sharing, like who's in my family, to higher risk sharing, which is your need, right? What makes you unique? What are your disabilities? As caregivers, guardians, parents, we can feel really scared for our young people to have, to present in this way. But we've got to support our young people, even if it feels risky. But what I found in doing this work and supporting schools in this is that when a young person gets up in front of their classmates, it doesn't matter if it's one classmate or the entire school, and they share about themselves, it is not viewed as bait for bullying or teasing by their neurotypical peers, but it's viewed as courageous. It's viewed as brave. And oftentimes, our students who don't live with those disabilities just want awareness, right? It goes back to that model I shared earlier. Awareness is the foundation for empathy. How could they have empathy for students who are different from themselves if they have no awareness of them? So oftentimes it yields a really, really positive outcome for our young people with differences to feel loud and proud for that puzzle piece that's their disability to grow because they're more confident in it, and that their classmates go, wow, I didn't know that. How can I better support you? Goal setting can also be a way to boost self-confidence, right? When we achieve and we accomplish our goals, we feel good about ourselves. I think a lot of times, especially with some of our middle and high school students, we think about goal setting of like, what are you going to do after high school, right? That's like a huge goal. Start small. You could set a goal for an hour. You could set a goal for a day. You could set a goal for a weekend. You could set a goal for a month, right? Start small, achieve those goals, build that confidence. Creating a visual is really important so our young people can see how they're achieving the goal. I'm a big fan of just like a staircase, right? At the top step is their goal that they're trying to achieve. Every step below it is one of the things they need to do to help them achieve the goal at the top. So depending on how many steps there are would influence your diagram. And then build on success, whether that's they get to put a sticker on each step, whether that's a marble in a jar, some way that they're visually seeing the success. We've talked about self-awareness, then we talked about self-confidence. Now we're into the behavior, the action. They know who they are. They're confident in who they are. Now we can help them be an advocate for themselves. What are some ways that we can do it? One, role-playing could be really effective in safe spaces. So, for example, let's say one of the things that they are practicing is ordering at Chipotle. I'm not a sales rep for Chipotle, just an example, right? Ordering at Chipotle. If you're role-playing, you're not going to Chipotle to role-play, right? That's a higher risk environment. There's senses, there's noise, there's other people, there's pressure from a line, right? Practice in a safe space. Go and get the ingredients, pretend you're the worker at Chipotle, set up in your kitchen, the process, and have them practice at home multiple times before you go to Chipotle. Also, the first time you go to Chipotle, to have your young person practice their self-advocacy skills of ordering on their own. Don't go at noon when you know it's going to be busy. Don't go at 5 o'clock when you know it's going to be busy. Go at 11, go at 2. Go at times, especially in the beginning, where you know there's going to be less people, less noise, less potential triggers. Use those books and videos, making those connections, right? Find books, videos just on YouTube. There's tons of short videos you can find. So students can see examples of what they're working on, the skill that they're working on. So much of self-advocacy is developing common language. This goes back to having our young people in their IEP meetings. We need to make sure that the language that you're using at home to help your young person become an advocate is the same language that they're being taught at school, right? So if at school they're using zones of regulation, for example, we want to make sure we're using that same language at home. So if at school your young person knows that if they identify that they're in the red zone, that means that they're feeling triggered, they're feeling a little dysregulated, and they need to advocate for something to regulate their emotions. Then at home, you should be using that same language around, are you feeling like you're in the red zone? Because if we use different language at home than we use at school, that could be really confusing. And then lastly, provide scripts and opportunities to, again, continue to practice these skills. I know we probably have people on tonight's call who have kids of various ages. You might have kids in middle school who are just kind of starting this process. You might have young people that are in high school. You might have young people that are post-high school. So I want to talk a little bit about secondary transitions, and then we will open it up, and Alyssa from Parents Helping Parents will help moderate a Q&A opportunity. So please keep those Q&A going in the chat. We'll be getting to those in just a few moments. When we think about secondary transition, it typically starts at the age of 14, although it's really going to vary for all young people. And we want to think about it in 3 areas. First, well, what is this idea of a secondary transition? What are some specific strategies to prepare for it? And then I also have some additional resources for you tonight. Alyssa will also be sending out this slide deck to all of you as well. To get started, I want to share 10 tips from young people with disabilities that they think are really important in developing those self-advocacy skills. And again, as you listen to these young people with lived experience with a disability share about these tips and strategies, be making connections to how these relate to building self-confidence and gaining self-awareness.
It's very vital that you attend your IEP meetings because it's about you. Nobody's gonna know yourself but you, and you know what you need.
Start your transition plan early, ask about it, just in case your school never mentioned it to you. Know that you're supposed to have a transition plan at an early age.
For people like myself who have had advocates like a strong parent or a guardian, they're not going to be there in college and they're not going to be there with you for the rest of your life. So it's very important that you take heed and, you know, take notice of what you need. So when they do step away, you can just take the ball and continue rolling.
They can advocate for themselves by reaching out to their school support team to see what each staff members have to offer for them.
For students who do go to school with able-bodied peers or have able-bodied peers around them, maybe you can think of programs or activities that include both populations and that you guys can feed off each other and learn from each other.
For the workplace, I would like to see them interact with other employees that don't have disabilities, so it doesn't just have to be a disability employed place.
You should be really engaged, really open. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone because that's the only way you're going to know what new capabilities you have.
I would encourage all students to never be ashamed of their disability because I believe that everyone has differences.
Your disability gives you the voice, a different perspective on life that people may take for granted. So use your disability as a tool to teach others. Make sure you're a key player in everything. Make sure you're active. Make sure you're telling people, no, this is not how it should be. I work with it best this way, or I think I need this services.
We already have labels as people with disabilities, and if we follow through with the labels, then we'll never get where we dreamed of.
The future is not limited to anyone, and don't let your disability stop you. And all these things that you're doing now is gonna help you on the path to a better life and a more inclusive life and give you the freedom that you wanted to do the things that you want to.
Another piece that we have to really support our young people in understanding is that you have to cultivate a mindset aligned with self-advocacy, right? We know that mindset influences behavior. Mindset influences action. A lot of this is kind of reiterates what we've talked about and kind of summarizes and hopefully helps you all understand really why you have to start with self-awareness to get to self-confidence in order to cultivate this self-advocacy mindset. So one, we need our young people to understand their disability, right? That goes back to labeling it in an empowering way, and really understanding their strengths and the needs, right? We need them to be a part of the team. We need them to be a part of the IEP process so they understand their rights. They're a part of the conversation. Nothing about us without us. Setting those goals, big goals, small goals, achieving the goals, having visuals, those goals help to build that self-confidence. We need to ensure that our young people are able to communicate in whatever modality works well for them to create a solid support team. Ensuring, again, self-awareness, things like those digital projects I talked about, the videos, the podcasts, self-confidence, being able to present in some capacity about who you are is a way to tell people what works and doesn't work for you. There are tons of community resources. Being here tonight, tapping into the resources with Parents Helping Parents is just one way. We need to engage and ask questions, which we're going to do in just a moment, and recognize that there's no finish line, right? I talked about the identity puzzle. For all of us, for ourselves as individuals and for our kids, there's no finish line. Our identity puzzle is constantly changing. Here are a few links to resources that might be helpful for you. Again, we'll make sure that you get the hyperlinks so you can click on these and gain access to them.